Incoming message.
Welcome to Freedom Matters, a series produced by USA Vets for Freedom. In this episode, titled Mothers Against Anti-Americanism, we will reveal one of the many organizations that actively works to destroy the American way of life. But first, we are going to take a look at curriculum that was created for children in kindergarten through 5th grade. Parents all over the country are upset with the actions of people who work for our school districts because they do not seem to care about the expectations of the taxpayers who fund their operations and pay their personal salaries. Americans do not want or need any social justice activists teaching propaganda to our children who are at school to learn. Parents in Iran spoke up against the same problem caused by the same people several decades ago because they recognized the subversion immediately. American parents need to look for the root cause of these problems if they expect to see any resolution that is acceptable. In the Portland Public School District, they have a new curriculum called Understanding Our Bodies. Welcome, scientists! Learning about bodies is one way to be a scientist. Our bodies are really neat and every part is important. Remember that word, science. Gender. Gender is like outer space because there are as many ways to be different genders as there are stars in the sky. Each person is different and that is cool. Queer pride started as a riot. LGBTQIA2S+ people have experienced oppression in the United States since colonization, when white people arrived in North America. Over time, systems like the police were used to try to erase queer and trans people. In the 1960s, police would arrest queer and trans people who gathered in spaces together to try to stop them from being themselves. The police would be violent and would come back night after night. Pride marches. Today, the LGBTQIA2S+ community takes time each year to celebrate who they are. This is called Pride and happens all around the world. Sometimes they march in parades, sometimes they protest, sometimes they have giant dance parties. It is important to remember where and why Pride was started. Only you can know what your gender is. Even if other people don't understand, you are the only person who knows you the best. Your body. Some people call middle parts your private parts, but any part of your body can be private. Private means you only show people you trust and help you stay healthy, like your parents or your doctor. Only you get to decide who touches and looks at your body. This slide shows a picture of a circumcised penis and an uncircumcised penis. Now, I looked very closely at these slides and I could not tell the difference between the circumcised penis and the uncircumcised penis. I even asked my 14-year-old daughter to look, and she thought I was joking at first. She started laughing at me because she thought that they were both the same, and I had to explain to her that they are supposedly not the same. Can you imagine how children in grades K through 5th grade would react in a classroom when they saw those pictures? How will teachers answer questions from students who are confused about the pictures like I was? This seems like a challenging conversation to have in the classroom, so maybe the teachers will just respond by saying, use your imagination. Either way, it's inappropriate, and the majority of parents do not approve. This slide shows another picture of a boy with a penis in the scrotum. It says some penises are not circumcised, and some penises are circumcised. A lot of times people with these parts are boys, but any gender and kid can have any type of body. This slide shows some bodies have these middle parts: a vulva, a clitoris, a urethra opening, a vagina opening, an anus. A lot of times people with these parts are girls, but any gender kid can have any type of body. Language over time and across cultures. Different cultures use different words because language is created by people and changes over time. Language is often about power. Colonization is taking over, controlling, and erasing the places, cultures, and identities of indigenous people who were already living there. When white Europeans colonized different places, they brought their own ideas about gender and sexuality. Gender and sexuality diversity has existed since people have been on Earth. The different words that people use to describe themselves have changed over time. White colonizers tried to erase many cultures, including what some might now call queer or trans people. But these cultures already had words for cultures, including and ways of thinking about gender and sexuality. Gender is colonized. Gender and sexuality diversity have existed since people have been on Earth. The different words that people use to describe themselves have changed over time. White colonizers tried to erase many cultures, including what some might now call queer or trans people. But these cultures already had words for cultures, including and ways of thinking about gender and sexuality. This lesson includes words that are products of colonization. Other cultures around the world, especially Black, Indigenous, and Brown cultures and people, view gender in different ways and use different words. This lesson centers on the United States language of the past 20 years. In this slide, they talk about sexuality versus gender. It says sexuality is who you like in more than friends way. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, asexual, queer, pansexual, and more. Based on physical attraction, crushes, likes, and love. Usually labeled based on gender, usually only talked about with close friends or in situations about only sexuality. Involves other people, appears around age 5, continues to change and grow over time. Dominant culture assumes everyone is straight, is a boy or girl, who only likes the other binary gender, and benefits white, straight, cis boys. Gender, who you are, two-spirit, non-binary, genderqueer, gender fluid, boy, girl, cisgender, transgender, agender, and more. Includes many different pronouns, but any gender can use any pronouns. Heavily intertwined, mixed with daily language. You are the only experts. Developed around age 3-ish and can change over time. Includes gender expression, which are the visible parts of gender like clothes, haircuts, makeup, etc. Dominant culture assumes everyone is cisgender and benefits white cis boys. They have some closing commitments to change. Number 1 is, I commit to learning more about what LGBTQ's words mean and how they have changed over time. Number 2, I commit to learning about the history and leadership of Black trans women. Number 3, I commit to practicing pronouns and correcting myself every time. Number 4, I commit to attending QSA, GSA, and being a leader at my school. Number 5, I commit to watching and reading books, movies, and TV shows that have LGBTQIA+ characters. Number 6, I commit to being my full self. How many American parents approve of this curriculum for students in K through 5th grade? How many parents are not aware their children are shown images of naked bodies in elementary school? Did you notice the racist statements in this curriculum? Did they accuse all police officers of targeting gender whatever people a few decades ago? Can you see the coordinated effort to destroy America? Millions of parents are frustrated with school officials because they don't seem to care about the expectations the people who pay their salaries and fund their operations demand. Parents need to find out where this curriculum came from and why it's being taught to young children in our schools. We can start by looking at the United Nations, because they manage to insert gender into every report they publish. I will just go over a couple of things the UN does, because we need to talk about other groups that instigate social chaos and disruption all over the world.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
The United Nations is full of non-elected bureaucrats who are experts in language arts and the art of war. They demand citizens all over the world pay taxes to support their global subversive operations that are designed to destabilize nations. The United Nations planned Agenda 21 with the Baha'i religion, which is the world's fastest growing religion that is protected by the United Nations and the United States government. Baha'i promote the oneness of mankind, the oneness of religion, harmony between religion, science, and reason, one global language, universal education, elimination of all forms of prejudice, equality of men and women, economic equality, universal peace, obedience to government, climate change, and they promote all social justice topics the media and politicians talk about. Governments support Baha'i because Baha'i is a social engineering tool they created to control and manipulate all of us. People get drawn to this religion because the morally superior doctrine is impossible to oppose. I mean, who doesn't want a clean and healthy planet? And who wants to see poor people struggling all over the world? The Baha'i said the League of Nations was their first attempt at establishing a one world government, and the United Nations is their second attempt at establishing a one world government. This religion was banned in numerous other countries for good reasons. The United States and the United Nations accuse other nations of violating human rights when Baha'i subversion actors get arrested for crimes similar to subversion, espionage, and treason. Economic sanctions are imposed on nations that try to resist Baha'i subversion. This is the root cause of the US-Iran conflict. Americans go to work so they can make money to support their families. The United States government demands a percentage of our wealth generated from our labors to fund government operations they say are needed, including their personal wages, healthcare, and pensions. Congress decides how to spend our tax money that they collect. The United States of America is the largest funder of the United Nations. The United Nations is an organization that was founded in San Francisco by the same people who were responsible for instigating World War I and World War II. The United Nations pretends to work on peacekeeping missions and humanitarian missions. The Baha'i claim to be the world's most powerful NGO. The United States Congress has over 220 congressional records that mention Baha'i since the year 2000. The United States, the United Nations, and many other powerful allies like the UK accuse other nations of violating human rights anytime they arrest Baha'i for crimes similar to subversion, espionage, and treason. The US imposes economic sanctions against other nations who stand up against Baha'i subversion in their country. This is the root cause of our conflict with Iran. The Baha'i religion was founded in Iran 160 years ago. The British Baha'i version of history said the founder of this new religion was a prophet of God. The Iranian government said this is a fake religion that was invented by British military intelligence during one of the many times England tried to conquer Iran. The Iranian government, the Baha'i, and the British all agree there was a mass conversion of Jewish people to this new religion that right after it was founded 160 years ago in Iran. The founder of this religion told Queen Victoria the British style of governance was ideal for a one-world government. The British Empire never declined. They always controlled global propaganda to help secure their global dominance. They made sure they controlled the motion picture industry and broadcast television from the time these new technologies were invented. Iran is one of the only governments that openly calls out Baha'i subversion in the broadcast television industry. All of us were lied to by people who work for their interests. The only reason the British royal family is so wealthy and powerful is because they stole wealth from other people they murdered all over the world. This is an example of the propaganda that is produced to indoctrinate children all over the world. This particular document was produced for children in Latin America. The title is The World We Want. And that is typical of the way people from the United Nations speak. They say the future we want. They sound like bratty little kids that are, throwing a temper tantrum. So the document starts out by saying, what you should know before we begin. The United Nations, created in 1945, the UN is the largest existing international organization of which almost all states of the world are members. It is tasked with maintaining peace and security in the world, helping solve the problems that affect us all, promoting respect for the human rights of all persons, including children and adolescents, and providing support to countries to work together for this purpose. Did you notice the negative propaganda about police officers in the curriculum used in Portland, and the pro-United Nations propaganda published for children in Latin America? Those are just a couple of examples of the propaganda all of us were exposed to during our entire lifetime. Did you know that the first oil crisis we had in the 1970s, when people had to wait in gas lines, happened the same year right after they had the first meetings about their environmental concerns at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. The World Economic Forum is where world leaders in government and business meet to discuss how to manage all of us with their climate change theme for this time period in the never-ending global wars. This is where the unreasonable international trade deals are discussed. It is also one of the official sponsors of the Great Reset that was launched on June 3rd in 2020. Most Americans didn't hear about the Great Reset in 2020 because our media was busy telling us what terrible racist people we are while they attacked and demoralized our police officers. Politicians started saying we need to defund the police. This went on for several months. Some politicians, like Governor Kate Brown, said Americans that did not commit a crime need to pay reparations to other Americans that are not victims of a crime. Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, wrote a book titled COVID-19: The Great Reset. This book was published just a few months after the pandemic started. Schwab was quoted saying COVID-19 is the dress rehearsal for the Great Reset. The fifth focus area for the Great Reset and our new social contract is the responsible use of technology. They claim 48% of adults in America said the government should step in to stop misinformation and false information, even if it means losing some freedom to access and publish content. The WEF published an article that said governments have the essential role in shaping a new social contract. U.S. taxpayers are the largest financial donor to the United Nations. The United Nations is the Baha'i religion's second attempt at establishing a one world order, according to many Baha'i sources. The United States Congress supports and protects Baha'i operations both domestically and internationally. Baha'i social engineering is what is wrong in American schools. A conference to discuss global and local responsibilities for a just and sustainable civilization was held at the Ryerson Polytechnic University in Toronto, Canada on June 3rd through the 6th, 1999. More information about this can be found on the website shown below. They said the world seems to be changing at a dizzying pace, and many of the novelties offer a serious threat to the environment and to the human well-being. This conference aims at assessing the shortcomings in today's existing world order and at proposing new social structures and processes which are more meaningful for the present and desirable for the future. Are the non-renewable toxic fuels necessary to sustain our technology-based civilization? Does happiness really depend on consumerism and on the growth of population and of the economy? Can big and multinational corporations be redirected to serve all people and the environment? Can satisfying global living standards only be achieved by homogenizing the world's cultures? How many people can live a good life on a healthy planet? Is humankind able to self-organize in a way such that international law and customs will render wars and mass destruction obsolete and unthinkable? The document ends with saying governance is the sum of many ways individuals and institutions, public and private, manage their affairs. It is a continuing process through which conflicting or diverse interests may be accommodated and cooperative action may be taken. Global governance involves non-governmental as well as governmental organizations, citizens' movements, multinational corporations, and the global capital market. Interacting with these are a global mass media. The present membership represents 92 countries. This was posted on Baha'i-library.com in October of 2001. You seem to claim concern about the calamities that have befallen humanity. Through such calamities, overrated material needs appear in their proper light. Present calamities are part of a process of purgation to teach man that he must view things internationally, to pay more attention to his moral development than to his material condition, to awaken to the importance of our duty. Such suffering will remove us from our repose. At the bottom it says, "Do you understand New York now?" If the United Nations and the Baha'i religion really had something good that everybody wanted, they wouldn't need to put so much effort into hiding their activities and lying to everybody about what their true intentions are. Anatol Rappaport was one of the main speakers at the conference. His first scientific paper focused on mathematical models of parasitism, which is an association between two species in which one benefits and one is harmed. Is government a parasite? Do we need to ban government to keep everyone safe? Parasites stay alive and functional by harming others. That's what government does. We need to fire them all and replace them because they all failed. And we need to get the modern useful idiots to stop supporting their cause. All of us live on a need-to-know basis. In 2013, the United States Supreme Court ruled cDNA is patentable. What are the implications of this ruling? What does it mean? I believe that everybody does some things for a reason. We need to look at this and ask ourselves, why would the Supreme Court rule that way? And what does that mean for our children in the future who have any type of cDNA modification? The World Economic Forum said no one will own anything by 2030. They also said humans will evolve into a new species in the near future. Will people with modified cDNA be classified as the new species? Will laws apply to the new species, or is this the legal mechanism to steal our rights from us legally? Do they plan on charging everyone with ecocide, the new crime that international courts are drafting right now? This is Abdu'l-Baha's shrine burning in April of 2022. Do the Baha'i see this as a clear sign from God? Is this a divine message telling all of us that the Baha'i control movement is not what anyone wants?
Lords, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us just how devastating a global cross-border threat can be. Climate change and biodiversity loss are no different. In fact, they pose an even greater existential threat, to the extent that we have to put ourselves on what might be called a warlike footing. Having myself had the opportunity of consulting many of you over these past 18 months, I know you all carry a heavy burden on your shoulders, and you do not need me to tell you that the eyes and hopes of the world are upon you, to act with all dispatch and decisively, because time has quite literally run out. We also know that countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector, with trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders. It offers the only real prospect of achieving fundamental economic transition. Many of your countries, I know, are already feeling the devastating impact of climate change through ever-increasing droughts, mudslides, floods, hurricanes, cyclones and wildfires, as we've just seen on that terrifying film. Any leader who has had to confront such life-threatening challenges knows that the cost of inaction is far greater than the cost of prevention. So I can only urge you, as the world's decision makers, to find practical ways of overcoming differences so we can all get down to work together to rescue this precious planet and save the threatened future of our young people.
Prince Charles fell as he was walking on stage at COP26 right before he was going to give a speech about climate change and the catastrophe the world is facing. Is this another clear sign that they'll fail? They're into their signs, so they need to look. We got played.